Hi everybody, I'm Andrew Flushy, your Virginia traffic and misdemeanor defense attorney, and today we're going to talk about how to examine radar calibrations. If you have a reckless driving by speed or a speeding ticket in Virginia and you're trying to represent yourself or you're just trying to understand your charge, you definitely need to understand how a calibration sheet works and what's important to look at on it. So this is the first in a series of videos. I'm going to put together a little playlist for you that goes through several different pieces of the issues surrounding calibration documents. So the key part is the Virginia Code says in order to use a radar, speedometer, or LiDAR against you in court, basically the Commonwealth, the officer, has to put on evidence that their equipment was calibrated and found to be accurate within the past 6 months. And for radar and LiDAR, and they need to show or be able to testify that it was checked for accuracy before and after the incident in your case. But what evidence do they need to have for that 6 months? Well, that's a radar calibration document, or LiDAR, or speedometer. This right here is a radar. It's an old one, but it's still the same format that's used now. And so it gives you an idea of what to look for. The key thing is you want to make sure you're looking at the correct document. So that's why I wanted to start off this little series to show that you need to look for whether this is radar, LiDAR, or speedometer. That's the really most important thing to start with, is to make sure you've got the correct document. You can see this is showing Certificate of Tuning Fork Accuracy Test. So tuning forks are how officers calibrate their radar. So if you have a radar case, you need to be looking for a tuning fork calibration. That's what this is. If you have a LiDAR case, that's where they use the laser gun to determine your speed, you need to be looking for the LiDAR calibration. They actually calibrate the actual LiDAR gun every 6 months. And if you have a pacing case where the officer followed behind you and measured your speed using his speedometer, you need to be looking for a speedometer calibration. That's the very first step, is to make sure the document the officer is offering to the court is in fact a document that's even relevant for the gauge that he used to determine your speed. I've frankly had officers before where, of course I'm a defense attorney, so I kind of know what I'm doing. And I've had officers before where I go to talk to them before court about a client's case, and I'll say, hey, can I check your calibration? And they'll show me a calibration, and I look at it a little more carefully and realize this is a speedometer calibration, and they're talking about a radar case. And frankly, it's just an honest mistake in most of those cases. But it's very important detail, obviously. It's just like, you want to make sure you have the correct paperwork to try to prove the piece of the case that they're trying to prove. So that's all I want to talk about in the first video, is you need to be familiar, frankly, with what you're doing. This is one area where having a defense attorney is an advantage, because this is a very technical document. Usually, a lot of times they're double-sided, as you can see in this one. We're going to get into in a later video in the series about what to look for on the paperwork. But the very first thing is to make sure, look at the title, look at the top, look at what it's actually certifying, and see if it's the thing that they need to prove in your case. So you first got to know how they measured your speed, and then you second got to make sure that the actual document that they're claiming is proof in your case. Make sure it's actually relevant and connected to your case. And of course, on those lines, as the other issue is, how does the officer know which tuning forks is his? Or how does he know that radar P17 belongs to his vehicle? There's different codes they sometimes use, and so that's one of the important questions you could ask the officer is, officer, point out your tuning forks in this list. This is a list of, I don't know, about 10 different tuning fork sets with the local Virginia State Police. And how does your trooper know which of these tuning forks belongs to his radar? It's a simple question. Usually they can answer, but sometimes they can't. You got to make sure that the evidence they're claiming does tie to your case. Very just fundamental issue. So for the next step and try to how to get deeper in this and take this to the next level, keep watching the playlist we're going to link to right here, and you can check out how to analyze the dates in your case and also how to see if it's an actual valid copy. So check out this playlist.